So what are we going to cover this time?
General Gage, General Thomas Gage.
The British general?
The British general, of course. Lord Dartmouth talks to General Gage and says, we want you to act on this, and he does it really quickly. And he gets a hold of Lieutenant Colonel Smith and says, I want you to go to Lexington and Concord. Lieutenant Smith gets a second command, Major Pitcairn, and off they go within just a few days.
Mm-hmm. What kind of man is General Gage?
Well, he's a good man. He is liked on both sides of the ocean. Okay.
Why?
He is very gregarious. He's liked socially. He goes to plays and to pubs and what have you, but he doesn't drink or gamble like a lot of the other guys do. General Charles Lee, who is a militia general, actually was part of the French and Indian War and got to know Gage.
Oh, Gage was in that war too?
He was in the war with Charles Lee, as well as another little-known person, George Washington.
Washington knew General Gage.
He did.
And Lee knew General Gage,
Yes.
and he knew them.
Yes,
And they fought together.
they did.
Whoa,
Okay, now-
that puts a perspective on it.
So Gage, at the Battle of the Monongahela, where up to that point the British suffered their worst defeat, which we highlight in our four-part series, French and Indian War, he led the advanced guard, and they were the first ones to be engaged by the French and the Indian. It was Gage.
And he survived.
And he survived, yes.
I bet he never forgot that.
Oh no, he was wounded there. They were in combat together. And so Lee said of Gage, he loved his understanding. He loved his knowledge. He loved his heart. Now, Gage is not one to talk about a heart, which we won't see Lee until later.
Yes.
But he is a guy that is more comfortable with dogs. Yes, yes. And when we highlight him, when we get into the Revolutionary War battles, you'll appreciate that insight.
Okay,
And
so this is the man Lord Dartmouth is writing to, a well-known, popular veteran of battle, tested, who's already been wounded 10 years earlier. Now, does this character affect the outcome of what's going on? Is there anything here?
he was sent over to oversee the military side of he was in charge of all the troops in the American colonies, all the way down to the Caribbean.
Wow.
He was an extremely competent administrator.
And trusted.
And trusted. I mean, 50 different locations and groups and everything. So he's highly valued, and he was sent over here to take care of things, and he felt as though he could do that. He had served, he had gone back to England.
I couldn't think of anyone better.
Yeah, and then he would come back.
Yeah.
And so when he got, of course, the message from Dartmouth and did that, Washington criticized him because of what he did, which of course Washington would, Lexington and Concord. And then it wasn't until a little bit later that Bunker Hill occurred, and then Washington was sent up there to surround Boston with...
And fight Gage.
Well, they didn't necessarily fight,
but to face Gage.
Contained them. And so this is Gage, well respected on both sides.
So these people know each other.
They know each other.
They both fought together. They're both veterans. They're both British citizens.
Yes.
And now they're on the opposite side of this issue of, shall we have a republic or shall we just have a colony?
Well, of course, at that point, the colonies weren't even thinking about a republic from a standpoint of the form of government.
So they were just on the issue of human rights.
That's it. But it doesn't mean that they didn't look to Republican values as worthy. I mean, that's one of the threads as we go to the Constitutional Convention in 1787, that's going to come up. And actually before that, in 1776, when the Declaration of Independence is made, that they say you're no longer colonies, you're states, now go, everybody get a constitution. And so that's when some of this Enlightenment thinking that's coming through there, Republican values come through that, and looking to the people to be virtuous and do the right thing kind of comes through that. And that's a whole different segment. Right now, they're just saying we want our rights as English citizens. We tried 10 years to push back on the acts and everything. It didn't work. And now we have Lexington and Concord, a line John Adams said, the Rubicon has been crossed over. It's a different thing, and it's absolutely. However, negotiations are still trying to be made all through this. We haven't talked about Lord Dartmouth there, but he's going to come in, and some of what he was doing at that time. And so Gage and Washington, Charles Lee know each other. Gage was criticized because he allowed the Sons of Liberty a little bit more latitude than others thought that.
He did.
He did. He knew about them. He didn't crush them. Others said that you should have crushed them.
Why didn't he crush them?
Well, because the Sons of Liberty, nobody knew what the future would bring.
Right.
Okay. So if he would have known what they would become, he probably would have, but nobody knows.
So he was giving them freedom. He was protecting their freedom.
He was.
And still trying to enforce Crown policy.
Yeah. And when we go to Lord Dartmouth, we will see that same type of thing. There were many, many Englishmen in positions of power that were not for crushing the colonies, but maybe we can reconcile, maybe we can restore.
Which, that makes sense.
Yeah, there are lots of efforts. And so when we talk about the English or the redcoat side, we need to breathe their humanity into them.
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
Because just months before, years before, we were all English citizens. And at that point, we're still just saying, we want our rights, we want it, but every time we ask for them over 10 years, it's just more and more oppression.
Does Gage is his family in England, or does he have family in the colonies? Is he like from England and just temporarily there, or has he ever lived in the colonies?
Yes. After the French and Indian War, he went back there to London. As far as he's concerned, he's going to stay there.
Well-liked and everything
yes.
again.
His wife is a high-born woman that was born in the colonies.
What?
Yeah.
He married a colonist?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, now that puts some,
another spin.
Yes.
She was evidently beautiful, intelligent, very accomplished. They had several children. She was pregnant, and then they went back there, had the child, and she didn't want to come back here.
Well, yeah.
But he saw an opportunity because the king and his privy council had him up and said, well, you're the only one.
Well, who better to know the colonial side?
Yeah.
And yet, who better to know the military side? So we're on Gage, a veteran, and I'm one who is married a colonial girl, one who understands what it's like to live in the colonies, and at the same time, one who understands what it's like to be close to the king and to Lord Dartmouth. And sounds like he's the perfect man to be in a situation that if there was a resolution to be worked, he would have helped that resolution come out peacefully if he possibly could. It sounded like his plan for Lexington and Concord was the most peaceful way to take care of Dartmouth's orders, confiscate all the weapons for war, so that war is no longer on the table. Now talk has to be on the table. And now he has Breeds Hill and Bunker Hill, which is like an open, defiant declaration against the king. And he deals with it in a military way. And now where are we at with Gage?
Well, he was in the charge up the hill to Breed's Hill.
Gage is on the beach.
He's, well, not only up on the beach, but he is going up with his troops.
I can't fathom that. I cannot. The guy who's in charge of 50 colonial different situations, all up and down, all the way down to the Caribbean, wants to be boots on the ground. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. No, he was that.
Obviously, he's no coward.
No, he's a leader. He's a military leader that not only obeys commands, but leads his troops as an example.
Huge respect for that.
And the other officers, the other men,
they see their general right
Yes,
there.
and they're
That's
gonna-
what helps them charge 3 times.
3 times.
Their general is right there.
He was. And again, wait until we get to Bunker Hill, and we'll see more of his courage, his strength.
Goodness. I am really looking forward to
Yeah.
that series. That is something else. So after Bunker Hill, Gage is he unwounded, I assume?
I don't recall whether he's wounded or not, but we'll talk about that when we get to Bunker Hill. But, you know, that is another black spot on his record, Lexington Concord, Bunker Hill.
Even though he couldn't control it, it's, you know, you failed and you failed. All right.
If he had certain shortcomings, it would be that he underestimated the colonies. You know,
I
initially,
agree. He didn't think 4,000 militia, Minutemen, would show up.
Yeah, at Concord.
And he didn't think, and I'm guessing, that they would even stand the first charge, that they're farmers. This is a well-rehearsed military operation. Right. We do this all the time against the French, that they would, you know, just vacate. Yeah. And they stayed and stayed, and he didn't see that resolve that was in them. Wow. Yeah. I bet he did now.
Well, yeah, but if you take a look at the last 10 years, the Parliament, the King, underestimated.
They all did, didn't they?
They all did. The only thing that they could do is overwhelming force, military force. Crush them. You will submit. So,
and that doesn't sit well with Americans.
Boy, I'll tell you, but we didn't really know that. I mean, we had to discover that for ourselves.
Yes, we did.
And so as we look at our history, we are a resilient people of strong convictions and faith. We're a democracy where we are allowed to have the freedoms to have tremendous diversity. Mm-hmm. But the greatest problem or danger to freedom is freedom. Because if you have 10 different groups, they all want to prevail. That's disunity. Mm-hmm. If you have 10 different groups that realize as one nation where each one of us can exist, where we don't dominate, as we coexist, that is a strength that is formidable. Mm-hmm. But to separate and see, that's the weakness of democracy.
We had 13 colonies, all diverse.
I don't have 13 fingers, otherwise
yes,
I could use my foot.
And they said the way to get this is we have to all do this together. Even though we all have different ways of doing it, we have different talents, together. In fact, isn't there a motto or something like that?
I don't know, but what
divided
might be cool.
We something, together we...
United we stand, divided we fall.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
So right now, where we're at as a nation is we embrace our freedoms, and so much more that we forget the united we stand, divided we fall. Everybody wants to get their way.
This is a great message coming up to the 4th of July coming up.
Isn't it? And, you know, to have leaders that, kind of like the Constitutional Convention, where we need to talk and talk and talk and identify our different views, but now, how can we put them together the best we can to get to the next point where we have another discussion to a next point, but we do it united, because all empires fail when the inside rots.
And so Gage and Parliament and the Crown all misjudged or didn't even detect this inner possibility of a strength from united. We will stand. The harder you push us, the deeper you try to bury us, the more forged we are to stand together against your force. Does Gage retire, or does he walk away? He's got all these black spots on his records. Do you know?
He's relieved and reassigned, and then he is replaced. So that's the story
Yes.
of General Thomas Gage.